Weightlifting doesn't make women bulky. You hear that all the time. However, that's only half true. But the good news is you can also absolutely lift heavy, get stronger without ending up looking bulky. Hello and welcome or welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Hannah. I have certifications in nutrition and in fitness. And in this video, we will talk about what bulky even means, why some women can get bulky from lifting weights, and how you can lift weights, get stronger and build lean muscle without looking bulky. Now, before we get into why some women can end up looking bulky from lifting weights, let's first define what bulky even means, because that definition is crucial to understand why experts keep saying that you cannot bulk up from lifting weights, even though anecdotally many women experience that they get bulky or they feel bulkier by lifting weights and end up switching to stuff like Pilates, which is proven to be less effective than lifting weights for both aesthetic and health goals. So there are basically two types of bulky. First, there's that bodybuilder bulky, meaning lots of muscle mass, lots and lots of muscle mass, and basically zero fat mass. So you can actually see the big, huge muscles underneath the skin. Then there's the type of bulky where you also have a lot of muscle mass, but you also have a good amount of fat covering that muscle. And the bodybuilder type is very, very, very difficult to achieve. People who want that physique need to work years and years to get that physique. The softer type of bulky is a lot more common, but even that is quite hard to achieve because for that, you also need to build a sufficient amount of muscle mass. And building muscle takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. But this can happen, which is what we're going to talk about in this video. Because the bodybuilder physique is basically impossible to achieve for a normal person. Now, why do people say that women cannot bulk up from lifting weights? Well, because for us women, it takes a lot more time and effort and eating correctly to gain muscle mass because our hormones are different than male hormones, because we have less testosterone, and testosterone is what's necessary basically to build muscle mass. But here is the first important distinction to make between women, because even among us women, our female bodies have different levels of different hormones, including testosterone. For example, if you have PCOS, your testosterone or androgen levels tend to be higher, meaning it's probably easier for you to build muscle mass. That does not mean that you're gonna build muscle mass as quickly as a man would, but compared to someone with higher female hormones, compared to the male androgen hormones, you probably might have an easier time to build muscle mass. Still, even if you have PCOS, building muscle takes a lot of time, intention, and adequate eating, because for the most part, in order to build muscle, you need to be in a caloric surplus. However, many women still feel like they bulk up by lifting weights, even though they're not in a caloric surplus. So that fear that you have is absolutely valid, even though professionally, officially, we wouldn't call that bulky, because bulky officially refers to building bulk, muscle bulk. So a lot of muscle mass. And that takes a lot of time, intention, and a lot of food. So the main cause of women ending up feeling bulky is, you're probably guessing it by now, that they're not losing fat, but just putting on more muscle and maybe even some fat on top of that. Why? Well, there are a couple reasons behind this. First, many people, including women, when we work out, we get hungrier, so we eat more if we're not mindful about what we eat. Second, many people overestimate the amount of calories they burn while exercising. They end up being hungrier because working out tends to make us hungrier, especially if we don't fuel our body properly, meaning you don't eat enough protein, you don't eat enough calories, which is a tricky part to not undereat but also not overeat, I know, but we'll talk about that in a second. But also things like hydration or electrolytes matter a lot, because when your body is not getting what it needs, whether that's macros, calories, or micronutrients, it might keep sending you hunger signals, even though you're already above your calorie limit. But also more on that in a minute. Another thing that can create the bulky look or bulky feeling is puffiness of your muscles, which comes from inflammation, which is not necessarily a bad thing. So when you work out your muscles, you kind of hurt you tear your muscle. You put teeny tiny tears into your muscles, which then have to be healed by you giving your body enough protein. But until they're healed, there's kind of an inflammation going on, which is not a bad inflammation. Your body needs inflammation to build things sometimes. However, that inflammation can be bad if you don't recover enough or properly, which is a problem among many, many, many women who want to get fit and get lean and get strong and are just overdoing it by hitting the gym, weightlifting 4 or 5 times a week, and then doing high intensity workouts twice a week or even more than that. And then probably only also sleeping 6 hours, and then also probably under eating, which is also a kind of stress. And that leads to your body kind of always be inflamed. And inflammation can make you look puffier. Another thing that can your body or your muscles look puffier is water retention, which happens especially right after working out, which is why you might have noticed that right after working out you look kind of bigger. And that is only temporary. That has nothing to do with fat, not with muscle mass either. That is water going into your muscle, because your muscle can store a lot of water because of the glycogen in your muscles. But you can counteract that water retention with a few little tips that I will talk about later in this video. But a little bit of puffiness is absolutely normal and probably unavoidable, especially if you're a beginner. But this puffiness does get better. For some people it totally vanishes when your body gets used to lifting heavy. So a bulky look usually comes mostly down to nutrition and recovery, not to how heavy you lift. Although there's also some distinctions to be made about how heavy you lift and what effect that heaviness has on your muscle mass or the size of your muscle. Okay, so now let's talk about how you can avoid looking bulky. First, let's talk about what you can do outside the gym, because like I said, nutrition and recovery is the most important thing. Number 1, hydrate. I know you probably can't hear it anymore, but there's so many reasons why you need to drink enough water, including to not look too puffy. And I know this might be counterintuitive, that you need to drink more water in order to have less water retention in your muscles, but that's just our physiology. Our body holds on to more water the less water it has available going in. But here it's very important to not only drink enough water, but also to give your body enough electrolytes, because especially if you sweat a lot, but even if you don't sweat that much, you tend to lose a lot of electrolytes. And if you only drink a lot of water without getting enough electrolytes, that might lead to an electrolyte disbalance. And you can super easily do that either with a supplement, or if you want to go natural, one of my absolute favorites is coconut water. But there are also other foods that help with electrolyte balance, like bananas, cottage cheese, other types of fruits, salt, which is also why it's so important to not undereat salt. Yes, you shouldn't overconsume sodium, but you should also not underconsume it. There needs to be a balance. Second, eat mindfully, meaning don't overestimate the calories that you burn by exercising, but also be mindful to not undereat. And I know this part can be probably the most tricky thing, to not undereat but also not to overeat, especially if you're not tracking calories. It's probably the biggest struggle of most people, which is also why it's a big part of my health reset guide, where I guide you exactly through how you can learn to know how much food you need and also which type of foods. And something that can help you a lot with eating mindfully is to get enough rest. First, from working out, because your muscles need about 48 hours to rebuild, to heal themselves by you giving them enough protein. Second, if you don't rest enough, both when it comes to working out, but in general, you're putting too much stress on your body. Stress is good. You need to put some stress on your body, because working out, for example, is a type of stress. And then your body adapts to that stress, so it gets stronger in that case. But it can only do that getting stronger, that adaptation, if it gets enough rest to do that, because your muscles do not grow while you exercise. Your muscles grow, or you get stronger when you rest. Especially while you're sleeping, which is also why sleep is so crucial. Getting enough sleep, but also getting high quality sleep, but also resting in general. Not working out every single day. Rest days are so important. They can be active. You can still walk, for example, or do yoga, very gentle yoga, stretching, but not more than that. Don't overdo it. Otherwise, you're not going anywhere, and you're putting too much stress on your body. And when you're stressed, you also tend to be hungrier, which is one of the main reasons why people, next to overestimating the calories that they burn while exercising, tend to overeat when they start working out or when they work out, because they tend to get hungrier, which is also the reason why so many experts, including me, sometimes say that cardio is not the best way to lose weight, because when you do cardio, especially high intensity cardio, that is that huge amount of stress that you put on your body, and that for many people leads you to be ravenous after working out. And this effect gets even stronger when your life is also stressful. Not only your workout life, but also, your personal life, your mental health, your schedule. If your body never has time to chill out, to move from fight or flight, which it gets into by working out, to rest and digest, it cannot ever recover. And that leads to inflammation, that leads to overeating, to your muscles not recovering properly, meaning you work out a lot, but you're not seeing any results. So it is super important to also take care of resting mentally, physically and mentally. In this video here, I share some habits that I do all the time that help me regulate my nervous system to calm down from both my mental daily stress, but also from physical stress, because I love working out, but it's important to rest enough, also mentally. So these are the things that you can do outside the gym. And these are the most important things: nutrition and proper recovery, including stress and sleep. But there are also things that you could do at the gym that can determine how much muscle size you gain versus how much strength you gain. And this is a little bit, of exercise science. I don't want to go too deep here, but I have to mention this. Now, there are basically 3 types of strength training that you can do. First, there's strength endurance, which means light weights with high repetitions. Think Pilates, for example, or bodyweight exercises in general. These exercises usually don't help much with muscle growth and also not with strength, but they help with strength endurance, meaning how long you can perform a certain type of exercise. Now, if you're a beginner, obviously you will also see muscle growth from strength endurance training, for example, by doing bodyweight exercise. But when you hit a certain point of muscle growth, of strength, you won't see any progress when you keep just doing these high repetitions, low weight exercises. Which is why lifting 1 kg dumbbells or 2 kg dumbbells in order to not get bulky will not get you far, because at some point it's just not going to do anything for you anymore. Instead, especially at the beginning, you should focus on hypertrophy training, which is the second type of training, which is the most classic standard type of strength training, which is medium to heavy weights and between 6 to 12 or 15, depending on the definition, repetitions. And this hypertrophy, the definition or this word describes muscle growth. Why do you need muscle growth if you don't want to look bulky? Well, because in order to not be skinny fat or, just not muscular, you need muscle mass, and you only build muscle mass. Most effectively build muscle mass with hypertrophy training. So first, it's very important and the most important thing for your aesthetic, for having a lean body. Second, having enough muscle mass is very important for bone health and for metabolic health, including insulin sensitivity, because your muscles store glycogen. So they kind of help your blood sugar not to go crazy when you put carbs or sugar into your body, because your muscles kind of help balance that out. Described very simply. So this type of strength training is aimed at growing muscle. Doesn't mean that they grow big, manly big or bodybuilder big, just that they grow, which is what you want for health goals and for aesthetic goals, at least to a certain point. So you do want some hypertrophy. Whenever it gets too much size-wise, just adapt. You can just chill and just maintain and, go to the gym less. Or switch to another type of exercise. For example, mobility. So yoga, for example, more cardio. Whenever you feel like you hit your goal, your muscle gain goal, you can just adapt to that. It is simple as that. And what do you do after that? Well, there's a third type of strength training that you can do that is amazing if you're not a beginner. This is not recommendable for beginners, so please keep that in mind. But the third type is max strength training. So max strength training means lifting very heavy, aka not being able to do more than 1 to 5 repetitions, to have longer rest periods between sets. So you lift, for example, twice, and then you wait for at least 2 minutes, and then you do it again, meaning you train your maximum amount of strength that you have. So the heaviest weight that you can lift, just once, 5 times tops. And this does also help with muscle growth, but not primarily. Primarily, this trains your strength, so how strong you are. And this is also the type of strength training that helps build bone density, which is one of the main health benefits of strength training. And also usually focusing on compound movements like squats, deadlifts, pull-ups, any type of exercise where you need not your whole body necessarily, but most of your body. And this max strength training, like I said, might also do some hypertrophy, but not as much as if you did the 6 to 12 repetitions with medium weights. Now, if this still seems a bit confusing, which type of exercising strength training you should do and which exercises and how to build a workout routine that works for you and your goals, aka also making you strong but not bulky, this is also something I guide you through step by step in my health reset guide. I have that linked in the description. So to sum up, what should you do if you want to look toned? First of all, toned, that word is something I use too in my title sometimes because it is marketing. When we say toned, it's just
It just means having muscle mass that shows, meaning it's not covered by too much fat mass. It does not mean that you only get toned by lifting light weights or, no weights at all. You can absolutely get toned, aka, lean, long and lean, by lifting heavy. Lifting heavy is the most effective way to build muscle mass. And muscle mass is simply what you need to be strong. And what you need to look lean is low body fat percentage. And that you can achieve by being in a caloric deficit. Meaning eating a little less than you burn. A little less, not a lot less. And by eating enough protein to gain or maintain the muscles that you have underneath that fat, so that it can actually show once you lose the fat. Again, if this all sounds a bit too confusing still, check out my health workbook. I guide you through everything you need to know. Now, if I was starting from 0 or from, 1 and wanted to get strong and lean, I would not go to the gym 6 times a week. I would not cut out carbs or all my favorite foods. But there are actually 5 key things that I would do instead and that I recommend you to focus on. And I talk about them in this video right here. So make sure to check that out. If you're still watching to this point, thank you so much. I am so happy to have you. Drop a strong emoji below and I will see you in my next video. Take care.